I am on the Greek island of Ithaki, standing amid the ruins of a Mycenaean palace long connected with the story of Odysseus. It's a beautiful spot. You can see the sea. You can see the sea, in fact, in two places over there as well. These are the front stairs of this palace, right there. This would be the main hall behind me. And here we have a set of stairs. It's hard to see, even for me, and I'm right here. But it's, as you can see, it starts at the top and it goes down. Some of them have fallen out and away, but tradition calls this set of stairs Penelope's staircase. The main hall is here. In the story of the Odyssey, a day comes, it begins with a bolt of lightning in the clear blue sky. A bolt of lightning from Zeus, the cloud gatherer, and a clatter of thunder. And so the day begins. And on this day, Penelope, lying there on her bed in the early morning hours, thinks to herself, at last I must let go of Odysseus. At last I must let him go and choose a husband from among the suitors here in my hall. The suitors had been courting her for some time, as you may remember. She'd been weaving a funeral shroud for Laertes. She'd told them, well, when it was finished, she would choose a husband. But each night, secretly, she unwove what she wove during the day. Until one of the servant girls, who was loyal to the suitors but not to Penelope, but not to Odysseus, she told the suitors what was going on. They surprised Penelope in the night and forced her to finish that shroud. So the time had come, and if she was to keep her honor, she must choose a husband from among the suitors. So on this day, she reached down beneath her bed. There was a green wooden box there. Inside it, a key. She clasped that key tightly, and she walked through the house. And she came to a storage room. And this storage room she unlocked with the key. And in the floor of this storage room, there was a chamber, and there was a lid over it. And she reached down into this storage chamber, and she saw there was the bow of Odysseus. She took it out with a quiver of arrows. She took these things out. And then she walked into the hall. She walked in her queenly way. She walked up the stairs. These stairs which have a landing halfway up. They go one way and then the other way. And she stood there. And all the suitors, a hush came over all of them, gathered in the main hall as they were. And they looked at her, the queen of this kingdom. They looked at her and her strength and her beauty. And she said, "Gentlemen, today there shall be a contest. Today I shall choose a husband from among you. But it won't be just any man. The man I choose must accomplish a feat which Odysseus himself completed years before. He must shoot an arrow through axe heads lined up on the floor of this hall. 12 axe heads. If he can do that after stringing this bow, well then, I will take that man as my husband." So Eumaeus the swineherd busied himself. He took hatchets from the wall. Now these were ritual axes, smaller than a large axe, and each one had a little ring of metal at the end of the handle, and they were hanging by this ring of metal from pegs on the wall. And Eumaeus took them and he lined them up in the hall, in the megara, on the floor, so that all the rings were lined up. And the suitors began to try to string the bow. They each took that bow, each of them in turn. But the bow was very hard to string. It took a great deal of muscular strength to get that bow strung, and they failed. One after the other, they failed. After a while, Antinous said, "Oh, let's lather this thing up with some grease or something. Let's get it heated up in the fire." There was a fire in the middle of the hall. So they did that, preparing the bow to be used. So they kept trying, and they tried again, but they failed. At last, they threw that bow down into the fire. "This isn't a bow, this is a trick. This is a trick of Penelope's." Penelope heard all these words, and she said, "Perhaps my husband is not here. Perhaps he is not among you." And she turned, and with her handmaidens she walked up the stairs and away to her bedroom, where Athena spread sweet sleep over her eyes. Down in the hall the bow lay in the ashes by the fire. And then, in the corner of the room, there came a voice. An old beggar there spoke, and he said, "Let an old man try." They barely heard him at first. "Let an old man try," he said. "What?" they said. "What, you? No, this is not for you. This is a contest for the best of Ithaca, not for you." And Telemachus said, "Antinous, are you afraid? Are you afraid that this man, this ragged man in the corner of our house, who lives by begging from others, are you afraid that he will take this bow and he will string it and he will succeed in driving an arrow through all of these axe heads here and then take my mother as his wife? Are you afraid?" Antinous said, "No, I am not afraid, but this is a contest for the best of Ithaca. Yes, the richest ones, not for him, not those who crawl across the earth." And Telemachus spoke to Eumaeus the swineherd, and he said, "Eumaeus, give the beggar the bow." Eumaeus picked the bow up from where it was by the fire, and he began to walk. He began to walk towards the beggar in the corner of the great hall. Antinous shouted out, "Don't give the beggar the bow! Don't give the beggar the bow! This is for us, not for him!" Telemachus said again, "Eumaeus, give the beggar the bow." So Eumaeus walked to the corner of the hall, where Odysseus, in the rags of a beggar, sat on a low stool, and he placed the bow into Odysseus's hands. Odysseus stood up. He walked to the center of the hall. He walked to the place where all the axe heads were lined up in a row. 12 axe heads, one for each month of the circling year. He sat down on a stool. None of the suitors had done that. He sat down on a stool and, using his leg, he strung the bow in one simple, quick movement. The suitors were amazed. And then he took a single arrow and he sighted down all of the axe heads across the hall. And then he let the arrow go. Shink! It went right through all of the axe heads and plunged into a wooden pillar at the end of the hall. "Ah, lucky shot, stranger," someone said. And Odysseus said, "Yes. And now there is another target which I will hit. Apollo, grant me glory." And he took all of the arrows in the quiver. He dumped them down at his feet. And he picked one up. He strung that arrow, and he aimed right to the end of the hall. There was Antinous, guzzling down wine. There he was, sitting on a bench, heedless of what was happening, guzzling down sweet wine made by Penelope and Odysseus years before, in the springtime of their love. Wine they'd made themselves and kept in the storeroom in their house for some beautiful day of laughter yet to come. Antinous was guzzling this wine down, heedless of all that it meant, heedless of the love that had gone into that moment. And the arrow sped from the bow. Shoot! It hit him right in the throat. Gah! Gagging on blood, he kicked away the table, fell down, food, plates, and dishes everywhere, and he sprawled on the floor, dead. And Eurymachus stood up. "Stranger, you've killed one of the best of Ithaca. You shall die for this." And Odysseus said, I am no stranger. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, sacker of cities. You're in my house, you dogs. Prepare to die. And they all came towards him. Eurymachus said, Odysseus, yes, we've taken much of your wealth. We've eaten your food, but we will give you things, gold and silver, if that's what you want. And Odysseus said, nothing can wipe the stain on this house but your death. Prepare to die. And just like that, he shot an arrow at one of the suitors, and behind a pillar, boom, he died, fell down just like that. The others came, using the tables as shields. They came towards him, but the arrows leapt from his bow, one, then the other. So the fight went on, and with the help of Eumaeus and Telemachus, soon all of the suitors were slain. All that was left was Phemius the bard, cowering under a table in the main hall. He wasn't sure what he should do. Should he run? Should he run away from Odysseus or towards him? Well, he put down his lyre. He put his lyre down on the floor. And he stood up and he ran towards Odysseus. And he wrapped his arms around Odysseus' knees. And he said, Odysseus, they forced me to sing for them. I didn't want to sing. They made me do that. Please spare me. Be merciful. And Telemachus said, it's true, Father. It's true. They would have killed him if he hadn't sung as he did. And Odysseus said, Phemius, I will spare you. But look around. Look at this scene. Remember it. Add it to your quiver of songs. Remember all that has happened here, so that men and women in ages, thousands of years from now, will remember these events and know them well in their hearts. And Phemius looked at Odysseus and said, I will. So they spent the day cleaning that hall, scouring the floor, burning the bodies outside in the courtyard. All day the servants worked as Penelope slept sweetly in her chambers. Finally, when the sun was about to go down, when Helios, the sun god, was about to drive his bristling chariot down over the edge of the world, all was clean, all was prepared. And Eurycleia, the old serving maid, Odysseus told her, he said, oh, go tell Penelope that I have come home. Tell my wife I am home. So Eurycleia went up the stairs to the chambers of Penelope and told her. Penelope listened. And then she said, tell him I will be down in a moment. Eurycleia left the room, closed the door. Penelope sat there for a moment, looking into space. As far off the ocean sounded. And then she took a brush and began to brush her hair. And sometime later, Penelope came down the stairs. Came down the stairs to the main hall of the palace. And there, in the firelight, she stood, beautiful and strong. And there was Odysseus. You've come home, she said. Yes, he said. Yes, I've come home after so many years. Come home to you, my dear Penelope. Yes, she said. Well, many things have happened while you've been gone. A long time has passed. Many years. You'll find some changes in this place. I've moved a few things around, you know. For we are like rivers, men and women that we are. We change, we flow. Who's to say that I am the same woman you left? Who's to say that you are the same man who left so long ago? This palace is different than it was. You will find many things have changed. In fact, I've moved our bed. Yes, I wanted to be closer to the window to hear the sea. So I moved our bed closer to the wall there. Many things have changed. And Odysseus said, "Cruel woman, you cannot have moved our bed. No, you could not have moved our bed. You know, I built that bed myself from an olive tree growing in the ground. Yes, I crafted that bed around that olive tree rooted in the ground as it was. And then I built the house around that bed. You cannot have moved that bed." And she looked at him. "Oh, Odysseus," she said, "it is you." "Yes," he said, "I'm home." And they reached out for each other. And like two rivers running together, they embraced. And they cried tears of joy at being together again, and tears of sorrow for all the years they had lost. And then Penelope took his hand and led him up the stairs and to her bedroom. And there in that sweet place, they enjoyed the delights of love, remembering each other in their bodies and their hands and their lips. And when the time was right, they lay there telling their stories. And Odysseus told her all that he'd gone through out there in the wild seas of the world. And Penelope told him of all that had happened there on the island of Ithaca. So their two stories were woven together, making one cloth. And then they slept. But Athena had lengthened the night to give them more time together. So eventually they awoke, but it was still dark. They each realized that the other was still awake, was awake. And then Penelope took Odysseus' hand once again. And she led him down the stairs of the bedroom. She led him across the hall dark in the early morning hours. She led him out to the garden. And there they both sat down on a stone bench in that garden, amid the flowers. It was still dark, but the sky was beginning to turn blue, that pre-dawn light, you know, when the sun is about to rise. So they sat there for some time, the two of them, holding hands, sitting on that bench. And then the birds began to sing.